Righto, tell you there champs, so what you can see here is I'm playing GTA 5 on the Zepyrus G14, all AMD edition, and this is going to be the most epic shootout to find out which integrated solution, which integrated graphics is the best out of any laptop. So we're talking M1 versus M2 versus Intel Xe graphics, and of course these AMD Radeon graphics. So this is the Zepyrus 14, all AMD. As I said, it has a 6800HS processor. So that's the low wattage processor, and I know some people might say, well, compare it to the M1 Pro or Max, but remember, the M1 Pro or Max, the graphic solutions in those laptops actually replace discrete graphics, because this is lower wattage ultrabook parts, because it has the HS CPU, so the AMD 6800HS, and it has the 6800 GPU. Now, that is the discrete GPU. I've disabled it, and it's the 6800S. We have disabled that GPU and we're using the integrated Radeon graphics. So now we're going to see which is the most powerful integrated graphics solutions in Ultrabooks, and look at this. I'm doing 84 frames per second, 1080p, normal settings, GTA 5, Wolf. That's what I'm talking about. This could be your budget gaming laptop. If you had a 6800HS without a GPU, this could be your budget sort of gaming laptop. Look at it. I mean, integrated graphics now is so good, and I've got to tip my hat off to AMD. They're blowing away Intel in integrated graphics, I can tell you now, but will they blow away the M2? So let's find out. I've got to say this laptop is very impressive. 16:10 display, all AMD. It is very nice. That display is awesome. I really like this laptop. Stay tuned for my review on this, and yeah, the battery life's good. Everything's good. The power of that 6800S, which I have disabled in this, is pretty good. You got to stay tuned for this. So anyway, let's see if the integrated graphics of this AMD 6800HS can compare to the M2. Which one's going to be faster? Let me know in the comments right now. Guess which one's going to be faster. So here we have Shadow of Tomb Raider here, and the exact same graphics I've tried on the M1, M2 and the 1280p, which is the Intel CPU with Xe graphics. The exact same settings, so it's 1200p, 1920 by 1200, and the graphics settings are on high. I've disabled the discrete graphics cards, as I said before. Now let's run it and I'll tell you how fast the other ones are. So let's put it all in perspective here. Now we're getting 34 frames, 35 frames. I reckon it's going to be line ball there with the M2. So M1 Mac does about 21, 22 frames per second, same settings. The 1280p from Intel, so the Iris graphics, or actually they're called Xe now, 21 frames per second, so basically the same as the M1. The M2 does 29 frames per second in the MacBook Air and 32 frames per second in the MacBook Pro 13. So that's the benchmark there. M2, we're talking 32 on the MacBook Pro. No, yes, 32 on the MacBook Pro, and on the Air, 29. Same M2 processor there. So here we can see we're pushing 28, 30 frames per second. I can tell you one thing. I'll put the mic up to it. Yeah, you will hear fan noise. Yep, that's just how it is. Using 62 watts. And by the way, the M1 Pro and M1 Max use about 65 watts. Now, the integrated graphics on the M2 doesn't use 65 watts. I can tell you that. And it's basically silent doing this. So that is what it is. But this is the most powerful on the Windows world, the PC world, but will it beat the M2? It's going to be very interesting to see there. So just bear that in mind again. I'll just go through them again one more time. M1, 21 frames, 22 frames, 1280p, Xe graphics. That's from Intel. 22 frames, 29 frames for the M2 in the Air, and 32 for the MacBook Pro 13 M2. So yeah. Cool, let's see. We're pushing 40 something frames per second. Will the average beat it? I'm really interested to see how close this is, or which one is more powerful when it comes to integrated graphics. This is going to be the crown awarded right here, right now. Who's going to be the king of integrated graphics? And of course, remember the M1 Max, my M1 Max in my MacBook Pro 16 does 93 frames per second. Yeah, they compete with discrete graphics cards, and they actually use about 65 watts as well. But yeah, it's in a different class. It's not an Ultrabook. Actually, it's very similar package to this. The M1 Pro in the MacBook Pro 14 would be very similar to this, because this is Ultrabook parts and it's a very small sort of laptop. It's definitely not a full-on thick gaming laptop, this thing. This is really nice, you know, compact, great battery life. This Zepyrus thing here is just amazing. So it's the Ryzen 9 here, 6800HS. What's it gonna do? How many FPS? Can it beat 32? Drum roll. 32. 35. 35. 35. There you go. Without question, the Radeon graphics is the fastest integrated solution there, and you can see it's the 6900HS with Radeon graphics. I'm not using the 6800S, which is the discrete graphics card in here. I'm just using the integrated graphics, and we're getting 35 frames per second. So that's 3 frames per second better than the M2. So here you go. Here is the king of integrated graphics. But I've got to say, Apple, you've done a great job. So I've got to tip my hat to both Apple and AMD. Amazing graphics for Ultrabook sort of parts. And Intel, you've got to pick up your game when it comes to graphics. So anyway, catch you in the next one. Tally ho.